Welcome back. Now, as promised, the news in detail. Let's get now to our top story. Muslims across the world are protesting against India's unilateral revocation of Kashmir status as a disputed territory. This comes as India scrapped Article 370 of its constitution in a rushed decree. Political parties, civil society and students held protests against India in Azad Kashmir, Islamabad and Karachi. Indian opposition and civil society held rallies against the BJP's bill in New Delhi, Bangalore and Kolkata, amongst others. In occupied Kashmir, political leaders and civilians took to the streets against the abrogation of Article 370. In London, meanwhile, rights activists and the Pakistani diaspora held rallies outside the Indian High Commission. Meanwhile, Bangladeshi students in Dhaka also expressed solidarity with the people of Kashmir in a rally. Demonstrators chanted slogans against New Delhi's expansionist ambitions in India. Well, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation's Kashmir-focused wing is holding a meeting in Jeddah today to discuss recent Indian actions. This comes a day after India scrapped Article 370, stripping occupied Kashmir's special status. The Pakistani delegation, led by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, is participating in that meeting. Meanwhile, Pakistan military's Corps Commander Conference over the issue is underway in Rawalpindi. Joining us now is Air Marshal retired Shahid Latif. Air Marshal Latif, thank you very much for joining us here on Indus News and for, of course, taking out your time for us. Foreign Minister Qureshi is leading a Pakistani delegation to the meeting of the OIC, as you well know, over the Jammu and Kashmir debacle. How do you think Muslim countries help combat against India's threat to Kashmiri's identity?
Please repeat. I could not hear you very clearly.
Sure.
Can you repeat your question?
Sure. Foreign Minister Qureshi, as you know, Air Marshal Latif, is heading to the OIC meeting. How do you think that Muslim countries can help in this regard?
Look, to begin with, what India has done is simply beyond imagination, in the sense that there is a territory that we call as occupied Kashmir, on which there's an international organization by the name of UNO, that has passed a resolution 70 years ago. And all this while, the status of occupied Kashmir, according to that resolution, was supposed to be a disputed territory. And all of a sudden, and of course the same has been verified through the Indian constitution by giving it a special status. And all of a sudden, the new government now, the same government of Prime Minister Modi, in his second tenure, he feels so strong and he thinks he's got the majority to change the status of that region unilaterally, which legally he's not permitted to do. So what has happened is something alarming, and therefore there is a state of emergency, and the same state now prevails even in Pakistan, because Pakistan is a party and a signatory to that resolution which was passed by the United Nations. It is in this context that we have asked OIC to gather and immediately take notice of this blatant violation by India. And I think OIC can play its role. After all, it is an organization that comprises all the Muslim countries of the world. So therefore, it should play its role, and it should discuss this matter of Kashmir, and the background I've already given you. And if India has carried out this blatant aggression and violation of an international organization, this needs to be immediately brought to the notice of UN. We need to take some strong actions wherever we can. I think this must also be taken to the Security Council of UN, and an emergency session needs to be called. India, that otherwise says that they live in a committee of other nations that are democratic, this kind of an undemocratic action is simply uncalled for.
You know, Air Marshal Latif, a joint session may pass a resolution condemning India's this decision to revoke, of course, occupied Kashmir's special status. How could such a resolution influence that bill, which has caused that annexation of Indian-occupied Kashmir?
Yes, there is a special now parliament, joint parliament session, which is in progress. It has just started. And that is to show our concern and to highlight the importance of this event. Like I said, that we as a country are in a state of emergency and the same is nearly declared. So we must knock out all the doors that are available for Pakistan to register its complaint and call for its reversal, in the sense that the same organization which had passed this resolution and it has not been acted upon for the last 70 years. On one pretext or the other, India has never arranged voting for the Kashmiris, which this resolution had called for, and it has been making excuses in on one pretext or the other, and all of a sudden, because Mr. Modi feels that he is not strong enough and he can even bypass or override the international organization, and this is the step that India has taken. So in the joint session, I'm sure there will be a resolution passed asking for an immediate action, and obviously when it is passed by the joint session of Parliament, it carries a lot of power, a lot of weight, and I think this is how we need to move forward.
And then finally, Air Marshal Latif, Pakistan's military Corps Commander Conference is, of course, over this issue is underway currently in Rawalpindi, as you well know. What possible outcome could it have on this prevalent situation?
Certainly, it will have a great outcome, in the sense that we have to show our resolve to be prepared on all accounts, whether it is political, it is diplomatic, it is military. So all the leading organizations that command these domains that I've talked about have to show their preparedness and have to show the resolve, and that is why such meetings are being held. And military, as you know, in the context of India-Pakistan, is topmost. As you would recall, on 27 February, there was a small encounter after that Pulwama incident that India had created for an excuse to cross over LOC and attack Pakistan, which they did. And we responded immediately, as had been warned by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that we would respond at a place and time of our own choosing. And we did it. I think you will hear similar announcements at the end of Corps Commanders Conference, military-related announcement, and showing our preparedness and our solidarity with Kashmir, and showing also a resolve to go to any extent which is needed in order to undo what India has done.
Very well, Marshal Retired Shahid Latif, we of course appreciate your time and for talking to us here at Indus News. Let's move on with other news. Seoul claims North Korea has fired 2 more missiles into the sea off its east coast. The latest tests follow the launch of joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korean forces. These are North Korea's 4th such missile tests in less than 2 weeks. South Korea's defense ministry claims the missiles resembled short-range ballistic missiles launched by the North in late July. Spokesperson Choi Hyun-soo says the tests violate an inter-Korean military agreement. North Korea says the joint military exercises in South Korea have forced it to develop and test more weapons. It says the drills violate commitments made in recent talks with the U.S. China says it will take countermeasures if the U.S. deploys intermediate-range missiles in Asia. The Foreign Ministry's Arms Control Chief Hu Chong says China will not sit idle and let the U.S. station ballistic missiles in its backyard. Fu urged China's neighbors to be cautious and to not allow the U.S. to use their territory. He warned U.S. allies in the region they would face consequences if they host American missiles. This comes after U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Washington wants to quickly deploy new intermediate-range missiles in Asia. In other news, Syrian government forces have resumed military operations against rebels in the northwestern Idlib region, accusing them of violating a ceasefire. Both sides agreed to a truce during the Astana format peace talks in Kazakhstan on August 2nd. The Syrian army took action after rebels allegedly bombed a Russian airbase in Idlib. Syrian state media has accused Turkey of helping rebels in launching that attack. Britain has joined the United States in a maritime security mission in the Strait of Hormuz. Defense Secretary Ben Wallace says it is vital to protect freedom of navigation in the key shipping route. The purpose of the U.S.-led maritime security mission is to protect shipping through the Strait of Hormuz amid tensions with Iran. Meanwhile, the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas says his country will not join the U.S.-led naval mission. Speaking to reporters in Poland, Maas said Germany favors a European mission, but warned of the difficulty in making progress. He said it would take time to convince the European Union to carry out such a mission. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says a peace deal in Afghanistan is closer than it has ever been before. His statement comes as U.S. and Taliban officials work out the details of an agreement in Qatar. Speaking in New Zealand, Stoltenberg said NATO will not indefinitely stay in Afghanistan. Stoltenberg said terrorism comes in different forms and the world must stand together against it. Well, staying with that story, U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has said excellent progress has been made in the 8th round of the Doha talks for Afghanistan. Khalilzad says in the latest talks, he focused on the remaining issues to make a deal with the Taliban. The Special Envoy says the deal will allow for a conditional troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. He said talks will continue on the technical details and mechanisms required for the successful implementation of the four-part agreement. We're going now for our first break. Don't go anywhere, though. I'll be back with much more news after that. Welcome back. The U.S. has frozen all Venezuelan government assets in a fresh move to pressure President Nicolas Maduro. The White House says Venezuela's assets cannot be transferred, paid, exported, or withdrawn from the U.S. In an executive order, President Trump has barred Americans from doing business with Caracas. Maduro's supporters have also been banned from entering the U.S. The latest sanctions put U.S. trade relations with Venezuela on par with long-term foes such as Cuba, Syria, Iran, and North Korea. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned Moscow will develop new nuclear missiles if the United States begins to produce them. Putin's statement came after a meeting with his Security Council. President Putin has ordered Russian authorities to closely monitor any steps the U.S. takes to develop, produce, or deploy missiles. Putin also urged the U.S. to launch meaningful arms control talks. The U.S. formally left the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty last week after accusing Moscow of violating the deal. 8 people, meanwhile, have been injured in a series of explosions at a Russian military base in Siberia. The Emergencies Ministry says 11,000 residents were evacuated from the Krasnoyarsk region. The ministry says 5,000 more residents are being evacuated. Local administrators ordered Russia's biggest aluminum smelter to shut down as the blaze spread. The detonations at the base have stopped, and emergency services are attempting to control the fires. Elsewhere, the 18th African Growth and Opportunity Act Summit has opened in the Ivory Coast. The meeting seeks to boost trade between the United States and sub-Saharan Africa. Representatives from 39 African countries are attending the event. these countries want to benefit from the vast American market of 350 million consumers.
We will combine the promise of the AFCFTA with these new U.S. initiatives to help maximize the potential of U.S.-Africa trade.
Well, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, made law by the U.S. in the year 2000, provides preferential access to its market for exports from eligible African countries. Let's move on now to Italy, where that country's parliament has approved a decree toughening penalties for migrant rescue ships operated by charities in the Mediterranean. Drawn up by Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, the decree hikes the maximum fines for ships illegally entering Italian waters. The fine has been increased from €50,000 to €1 million. It also provides for the arrest of captains who ignore orders to stay away and calls on naval authorities to seize their vessels. This comes as Spain's Proactiva Open Arms charity sought permission to disembark rescued migrants in either Italy or Malta. Well, as the unemployment rate hits an 11-year high in South Africa, people are struggling to make ends meet. Despite President Cyril Ramaphosa's pledge of an economic turnaround, the current statistics portray a bleak future. Job cuts across a host of sectors are set to continue into the next few years.
South Africa's unemployment rate jumped to its highest since the global financial crisis more than a decade ago. This has piled pressure on an already shrinking economy. Though the government provides grants, it's not enough for survival.
It's month end, now I have to be looking for specials. My little brother's got a son, I have to go buy nappies, I have to be looking specials, I have to go buy food. I mean, I'm the only sole breadwinner at the age of 30, or else it's traumatic.
Government-owned organizations are also facing huge losses, forcing them to lay off workers. President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised to create 100,000 new jobs, but analysts doubt he can do it.
I think South Africa has been growing structurally like a developed country. So the sectors that have been growing fast have been sectors like the finance sector, construction sectors, and these sectors belong to the non-tradable sectors. So these are sectors that cannot be traded and we can't get revenues from them. So if
economists say the government needs to focus more on the agricultural sector. They warn the economy could deteriorate further if it's not prioritized.
A cartoonist in Syria thinks she has found an easy way to describe the ordeal of the war-torn region. Amani Al-Ali takes her pen to the screen to sketch life in the embattled region of Idlib.
Idlib is a jihadist-run region of 3 million people in war-torn Syria. It has come under increasing bombardment by the regime since late April, despite a months-old truce. And Amani Al-Ali puts the ordeal of Syrians into cartoons while engaging in political satire.
I drew this painting after being touched by an image taken by a Syrian photographer of a displaced woman who lost her mind after losing her home. I chose to draw it with a blue pen, knowing that it is very hard and time-consuming to use it.
Through her art, Amani condemns international apathy towards civilian deaths. The cartoonist also dissents against the anti-regime bastion, which says is no different than regime. In one of her art pieces, a warplane drops candy wrappers containing TNT instead of sweets. The sketches are etched out in black and white with splashes of red.
I draw cartoon and comic drawings. In cartoon, I always focus on the Syrian situation. And when I switch to comics, I focus on the social situation and the issues of women in the liberated and the Syrian-controlled regions.
According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the spike in violence over the past 3 months has killed more than 790 civilians. Amani Al-Ali says through her art, she wants to show the world Syrians are not voiceless.
Well, the U.S. has officially declared China a currency manipulator amid rising trade tensions between the two countries. After the U.S. announcement, Chinese media said Washington is destroying the international order. Global financial markets have incurred losses for a third straight day after China's trade war with the U.S. intensified. Asian stocks slid on China's decision to halt purchases of American agricultural produce and to let the yuan slip against the dollar. The U.S. responded by declaring China a currency manipulator, sparking a 3% plunge on the Wall Street. Tracking those losses, Australia's ASX 200 index has shed more than 2%, while the Shanghai Composite is down more than 1%. Japan's Nikkei 225, Hong Kong's Hang Seng, and the Kospi are also in negative territory. Crude oil futures are trading 1% up. At Peru's Pan American Games, Argentina have defeated Chile to win gold in the men's handball. Brazil have edged Mexico to take the bronze. Argentina eased past Chile by 31 goals to 27. Centre-back Diego Simonet led the Argentina attack with 11 goals. In the bronze medal playoff, Brazil cruised to victory over Mexico, winning 32 goals to 20. Meanwhile, in the men's 10-meter platform diving final, Mexico's Kevin Berlin-Reyes has won gold. Reyes' compatriot Ivan Garcia Navarro claimed silver, while Vincent Rindio of Canada came third and took bronze. Australia beat England by 251 runs to win the first test of the Ashes series at Edgbaston. The win put Australia ahead in the series in the UK for the first time in 14 years. Steve Smith was declared man of the match for scoring centuries in both innings for Australia. Nathan Lyon sent 6 batsmen back to the pavilion in England's second innings. This was the first test loss for England at Edgbaston in 11 years. South Africa's leading wicket-taker Dale Steyn has retired from Test cricket to prolong his limited overs career. He'll be available for one-day and T20 internationals. Steyn made his Test debut in 2004 and took 439 wickets. He played his last Test match in February against Sri Lanka at Port Elizabeth. Steyn is 8th in the list of highest wicket takers in the long format. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And you're all caught up. Thanks very much for watching this bulletin here at Indus.